Hello and welcome to Go-to-Market Foundations. In this series, I'll be talking through key concepts and challenges involved in developing innovative products and taking them to market. If you're a founder or part of a commercial team in a startup or SME, you'll probably already be familiar with many of these concepts, but I hope that the examples I give of how they apply in practice will be helpful. I also aim to provide clear language and to make the concepts accessible to the wider team, promoting good teamwork and avoiding needless friction by making it easier for the whole business to understand the strategy and the reasons for it. First, a little about me. I'm Alden. I'm a product strategy advisor at ValueLink Pro. I have about 25 years of experience in taking innovative products to market as a software developer, product owner, and product manager. An important part of that journey was at Amino Communications as I moved from an engineering and team leadership role to product management within the same business. That process meant that I got to see the same discussions from opposite sides of a table and to experience how easily different perspectives led to miscommunication and friction, showing me the importance of a common understanding of commercial reality and the business strategy that it drives, which became part of my motivation for this course. As I explain in the introduction video, the Go-to-Market Foundation series is structured around the 5 stages of a business roadmap. Each of the concepts I discuss in this foundation series applies throughout the lifetime of your business, but will be particularly acute depending on where you are in that journey. In this video, I will be looking at concepts crucial to the development phase. The develop phase is all about understanding what's possible, what's valuable, and the compromises necessary to join up the two. You start with a vision of a problem that is worth solving and an idea of how you can do it, and you end with some tangible product you can take to market. The first thing essential to understand in this process is the concept of product itself and the way it defines your business model and your pricing structure. Secondly, the role of product management is critical. Even if you don't have dedicated product managers, this is all about compromise in product development. Finally, it's useful to understand the concept of a minimum viable product, where this idea comes from, and how to apply it most effectively. We'll start with the project versus product business models. If your vision is a business to business offering, this section will be particularly relevant to you. For business to consumer offerings, simply because of the nature of the market, the blurred boundaries between project and product are less likely to arise. However, some care is still needed. If your route to market is via a scaling partner, such as a consumer group or a distributor, you can still get drawn into building their vision, and then similar problems begin to emerge. With that in mind, let's begin by defining what we mean by a product. A car is obviously a product. You go to a dealer, you have a test drive, you give them some money, and you drive away with a thing which you now own. What you drive away in is not any car you can imagine. It's your choice of cars from the cars on their lot or from the options in their catalogue. A product is a discrete thing. But what about trading in your old car? When you go to the dealership, they'll make you an offer, you'll haggle a bit. It's flexible, it's bespoke. Compare that with a car trading website. You know precisely what the outcome will be before you start the process. You'll probably make a little less than you could make on a good day if you handle all the haggling perfectly. But that's the trade-off that you get. You get a guaranteed outcome. They've made how you sell your old car into a service product. And this matters because the business model between project and product is very different. When you go to buy a car, you choose from the options available. Why do you choose from the options available rather than getting any car you can imagine? It's because you're buying a product. You pay less than the cost of developing the car and designing the car because the manufacturer gets to spread that design and development cost over all their sales. Compare that with having a car custom made to your design, a project. You're paying for the design, so you get to keep and aggregate the value of that design work involved, but you have to pay for all the design work involved and the provider's profit. That's all pretty simple. But what about a situation when you have a lead customer and they pay you some non recurring engineering fees, NRE, while you're still developing your product? This is common, especially for B2B products where you're part of a larger supply chain. And as a startup or SME, that upfront revenue can be very important, both for your runway and as a metric for your investors. In this situation, the line between project and product becomes blurred. The more you need that revenue, the more leverage the customer has over your scope and your roadmap. You always need to focus on whether the work is creating something you can resell and how much of the work you can resell. You'll have to be flexible, but let the customer drive the scope too hard, and you end up with the worst of both worlds. You get paid less than what the work costs, and you don't get to amortize the investment. Many customers will push hard to obtain this outcome, but it's only a good deal for them in the short term. In the long term, if you go bust, their system is no longer being maintained. Keeping your product generic reduces their pricing, which helps everyone. It's not a product unless you can define your market. You have to have your target market and their financial potential in mind as you develop your product. It doesn't matter how much better your $1 million can opener is. Is there anybody out there in the world willing to pay $1 million to be able to open cans when they can do so perfectly successfully for just a few dollars? Can you charge people for air when it's available for free? Of course. People successfully market bottled water in a country where tap water is safe to drink. So, yes, you probably can sell air, and probably somebody is. And there probably is a market for $1 million can openers. But you have to know who. You have to know how you're going to reach them. You have to know why they're willing to buy. It's not a product until you can define your market. Once you know your market, you need to be able to explain why your product is a fit to their need. It's not enough to be able to solve a problem. You have to be able to explain why and how your product is the best or at least a viable solution for the problem you're targeting. Finally, you have to be confident you can deliver the value you promise. Confidently deliver does not necessarily mean built and sitting on a shelf, but you need to have good reason to believe that you can build it. Similarly, one unit sitting on a shelf is not enough to be able to confidently deliver if you're promising your product to thousands or millions. You need to know how you're going to be able to build at scale. You need to know how your logistics and shipping will work. Do you have suppliers in place? And can they deliver in the volumes you need? What happens if a supplier goes bust? Theranos had a vision of a thing with a value that they could describe and that people would be willing and to pay for. But until you know how you will deliver it, it's a dream, not a product. Confidently deliver tends to be the thing that product managers spend their whole life worrying about, and that's the focus of the next section. So, to summarize, a project is work to deliver an outcome. A product is anything that you can confidently deliver with a value you can describe that someone is willing and able to pay for. When you take NRE from a customer, always be sure that you understand what they're paying for, how much of your project-specific costs that will cover, and how you will use aggregated value to cover the gap. Not all projects need to pay for themselves straight away. Sometimes a loss-making project is still a good deal if it helps you get to market quicker or provides the evidence that your investors need that you found a valuable problem to solve. But don't do this accidentally, only ever deliberately. So, let's talk about the role of product management. A lot of the details of how the role is filled will vary from one business to another. For example, in startups and small businesses, the leadership team will often want much more involvement in roadmap and product strategy, whereas concerns like regulations and compliance might sit with the development team until the business grows. In this section, I'll be looking at the heart of the role, the crucial problem it exists to solve, regardless of how titles people hold and how responsibilities get split. This is one of the biggest factors in the success of your business. It's all about how strategy gets turned into implementation. In the natural way to think about this, it's all very simple. There's a business strategy, and then there's work to deliver the strategy. Plan, execution, profit. But in practice, it's never quite that simple. When you turn strategy into implementation, you always run into the question of how, and there's always a compromise to be made. Each problem can be solved in many ways, and some of them will be better than others. You can, and you should, delegate as much authority as you can, as close to the cutting edge of development as possible. But sooner or later, you'll encounter a decision where the development team doesn't have the information to be able to make the judgment. One that depends on how you want to position the brand, or which user group you need to prioritize over another, or how quickly we expect usage to scale. The role of product management is to sit at the boundary between commercial and technical awareness, to understand the technical constraints resulting in the options available, but with the commercial context which best aligns with the business plan and why. It's the art of the possible, the process of compromise, and of taking responsibility. Very often, there's no certain and definite right answer possible. And while you go searching for one and dredging up the data needed to make the best decision, development is blocked. So regardless of what title they hold, someone in your organization will begin to own the details, deciding which of a billion boring, trivial, and irritating decisions to chase down carefully, because it really does matter, and when to pick something in the right area and just go with it, because sometimes momentum matters more. And that tends to become all that person does, because it takes time to understand what's possible, time to understand what's valuable. Those decisions are not arbitrary, valueless, or unimportant. They capture your understanding of the market. Building a product is a process of compromise. If it's going to be X, it can no longer be Y. If you want it to be big, it can no longer be small. A yellow button can't also be green. But when you choose big, small, green, yellow, you choose it for a reason. You choose it because that's the best answer for the needs of your market as you understand it. Each decision makes your product more fit for the market you're trying to serve, at the cost of sacrificing the other things it could be. A product is not anything to anyone. It's the thing that you've made for the people you've made it for, and nothing else. The product management role in your business aggregates value by capturing the compromises that best meet the needs of your target market. Because the role requires technical and commercial awareness, it usually falls on more senior or experienced staff. But because that stream of decisions that need to be made is constant, it can be very time-consuming. Hence, many businesses will hire dedicated product managers as the business grows to maintain productivity and keep the burdens on the founders and the leadership team manageable. Fast and efficient decision making is one of the best things that you can do to improve productivity and morale. Moving as many decisions as possible to the development team is the best way to achieve this. And then having a good structure and the right people so that decisions that the team can't answer or don't want to own can be made quickly. So, how do you know which compromises are the best ones for your target market? How do you know what to build and what users will value? The answer is by understanding how to use the concept of minimum viable product. A common way to think about MVP is that you start with a product vision and then you do some development, and then the thing that you launch is the MVP. And the concept of MVP in this model is handy in keeping the focus on launching early. But by thinking this way, you're missing out on most of the value of the concept. The process of developing a product is a process of discovery. You don't know what will be possible or valuable until you try. When you use MVP to mean the thing we ship, what you're doing is leaning hard into your bet that your vision for that product is going to be right. But what if it's not? Or at least, what if there's something like that vision, but better, that would be more possible for you to make, more valuable for your customer? How could you find out what that would be? If you start looking at MVP as the end of a journey, you lose out on the iterative learning process that was the reason why the term was initially created. MVP is not the end of the journey, it's the next step. The message of Agile is don't overinvest in building what you think the customer will want, launch early and find out. Once you start thinking about MVP as the product that will take you to the next step, then you begin asking interesting questions. Launch is a key question. Do we have market fit? But maybe there's something smaller we can use to answer part of that question first, so that the answer, when we get there, is more likely to be yes, like a pilot study, or a friends and family trial, or even just a tech demo. The more you ask yourself, what do I need to know next? And what's the smallest thing I can do to find out? The faster you'll discover the information you need to make your business successful. MVP is also not when you stop. If your launch is successful, if your market wants what you've made, that probably doesn't mean that you're done. It means that your product vision, insofar as your MVP has been able to test it, is validated. So then the question is, what happens next? What will make your product stickier? How can you increase your profitability? How do you scale? How do you respond to competition? You will need more MVPs as you continue to explore these questions. So then, rather than being what you launch, MVP is best thought of as the smallest thing that you can make to find out what you need to know next. There are often key risks and uncertainties you can manage with experiments much smaller than a full product launch, like a proof of concept or a friends and family trial. Don't see risk as a negative thing. The only way that you can avoid uncertainty is by doing something that's been done before, and then you're no longer innovative. Understanding your risks and planning how you can manage them will be key to your success. By recording your risks in your business plan, you'll always know the smallest experiment that you can perform next, maximizing acquisition of market intelligence, and thus the velocity of your business. So in this video, I've talked you through the business models of product versus project, the role of product management, and understanding MVP. These are key concepts throughout the lifetime of the business, but they're particularly important during the development phase. In future videos, we'll be looking at launch and how you find market fit, pricing, and using features and benefits to explain your value. When stabilizing your product prior to growth, I'll look at quality, prioritization, a particularly acute problem at this stage, and how to lay strong foundations for growth without overinvesting. In the growth phase, I'll look at the role of relationships in sales, cost of sales, and how to use channels and partners to multiply your sales power. Finally, in compete, I'll look at barriers to entry and understanding your cost base. Thank you for joining me, and I hope to see you in another video soon.